Now, question 4. So question 4 is a hyperbolic function. G of x equals 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. All right. So the first thing here is write down the equation of the asymptote of G. So we can calculate the first asymptote, the x asymptote. So the x asymptote will be calculated by setting the denominator here, which is s minus 1 to 0. So if we have x minus 1 equal to 0, it means x will be equal to 1. For the y asymptote, or the horizontal asymptote will simply be this value here, plus 2. So we maintain the sign. So the equation of the asymptote will be x equals 1 and y equals 2. So that gives you the full 2 marks there. Now, question 4.2. Question 4.2. Draw a graph of G indicating any intercept with the axis and asymptote. So here we have to calculate the individual intercept. So let's calculate the x-intercept. And the x-intercept is gotten when y equals 0. So we substitute y equals 0 in place of this g of x. So it means that 0 would be equal to 1 over x minus 1 plus 2. Now we can make s the subject. To make s the subject, we transfer that plus 2 to the left-hand side. That makes minus 2 equals 1 over x minus 1. And we can solve that further. So if we cross multiply, we have negative 2 into x minus 1 equals 1. So we can divide both sides by negative 2. So we have x minus 1 equals negative half. So we can shift that negative 1 to the right-hand side. So we have x equals 1 minus half. So it means that x will be equal to half. And we can write that in coordinate form. So we have half, then 0. X equals half, y equals 0. Let's calculate the y-intercept. The y-intercept is gotten when x equal to 0. We will make appropriate substitution to get the value of y. So y, which is g of x, will be equal to 1 over 0, the value of x minus 1, then plus 2. So 1 divided by minus 1 is minus 1 plus 2. That means that the value of y in that case will be 1. We can write it in coordinate form. X equals 0 and y equals 1. And we can now draw our graph. Now, to draw our graph, we need to pay attention to this numerator here. The sign in front of this numerator plays an important role in the placement of your curves. The sign here in this case is positive. So it means that you must look for the x and y axis whose multiplication will give you a positive answer. And that will be, in this case, it will be in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant. In the first quadrant, y has a positive value. Y will have positive values, and x would have positive value. Positive times positive would give you positive, which is the sign in front of this numerator here. In the third quadrant, the values of x are negative. So you have negative here, and also the values of y are negative. So you have negative times negative, which also gives you positive, which is the sign in front of this numerator. So when you have positive as your numerator, your curves will be in the first quadrant and in the third quadrant. On the other hand, if this is a negative value, then the curves will be in the second and in the fourth quadrant. Now, we have already calculated our x-intercept and our y-intercept. At this point, x equals half and y equal to 0. That's the point here. We have our x-intercept and we have our y-intercept at x equals 0 and y equals 1. So that is this point. So, and before we do that, we have to draw our asymptote. So our horizontal asymptote passes through y equals 2. So that is this horizontal broken line you're seeing here. And our vertical asymptote passes through the point x equals 1. So that is the broken line passing through the x-axis. So you have to draw it. So after drawing your asymptote, then you have now, you cannot answer question 4.2. And for question 4.2, you have to link the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So your curve goes through, the curve of G will pass through the two intercepts in this case. So it will go through the y-intercept and the x-intercept. So you have this curve. Then you will have the other curve in the first quadrant facing this curve of G of X. And by that, you have answered question 4.2. So they just told us to draw the graph of G of X, indicating all the two intercept, X and Y intercept. And on that curve of G of X, we must indicate the position of the asymptote. So that solves question 4.2.